Donald Trump's accountants apparently booted him at some point in the last week. That is Mazars USA. They've been the accounting firm that the Trump organization has used for many years. They've apparently parted ways with Trump. They ended their relationship at some point, calling into question, like very specifically, not by implication, they are calling into question the trustworthiness of a decade's worth of financial statements that had been prepared by Mazars USA for the Trump organization. This was revealed in court documents filed Monday as part of an investigation by the Attorney General of New York into the Trump organization's business practices. That's been an ongoing investigation. This is just the latest development. So Mazars sent a letter to the Trump organization. This is dated February 9th, so very recent, saying that annual financial statements it prepared for Trump between 2011 and 2020 should no longer be relied upon. And in part they say, while we have not concluded that the various financial statements as a whole contain material discrepancies, based upon the totality of the circumstances, we believe our advice to you to no longer rely upon those financial statements is appropriate. So there is a lot of like weasel language and vague language here, which we can definitely speculate upon. But they are cutting ties, and they've been working with the Trump organization for a long time. And this is not like Cenk or I getting a new tax prep person. An accounting firm that works with an organization as big as the Trump organization, that is a huge thing, a very valuable contract for them to have. So there's gotta be a good reason why they don't wanna be involved with them anymore. And while going out the door, not just saying goodbye, but saying, oh, basically all that work we did for you, yeah, we're not necessarily gonna stand by that.
Yeah, so this is actually very large news, and for the first time leads to a tiny percentage hope that Donald Trump might actually be prosecuted and go to jail. Okay, hold. I'll give you the percentages, in my opinion, in a second. But first, let's give more context. So there are three layers of potential financial crimes that Donald Trump did. One is the one that he already got, that the proceedings have begun on, and his chief financial officer has been indicted on, which is, it depends on your way of looking at it, but I would call it honestly low-level criminality, right? Hey, they gave an apartment to the CFO's son, and they should have paid taxes on it, but they didn't, and they didn't report it, etc. Is it illegal? Yes. If you got caught on it, would you suffer consequences? Very, very likely, okay? Then there is larger level financial crimes, which is regularly reporting something on IRS forms and then reporting completely different values for your properties when you're getting a loan. So you want the properties to be valued high when you're getting a loan because you're gonna borrow off of them. You want it to be valued low when you're submitting it to the IRS because you wanna pay less tax on it. That is not at all kosher. And when Trump says, oh, it's a genius business move to go bankrupt. That's why I went bankrupt. You stiffed the people who trusted you and gave you money, and then that way you don't have to pay them back. And I know right wingers actually believe that. No, it is not savvy business to go bankrupt. I have to explain these simple concepts, right? And no, lying to the IRS is not a simple matter, or lying to, by the way, creditors. That is significant criminal activity.
Specifically, what you're talking about there is there was a bit of a viral moment. That's basically the sort of crime that Representative Ocasio-Cortez was talking with Mike Cohen about.
Yes,
during his testimony.
Yes, and Michael Cohen's come on TYT as well and talked about it here as well. And so, this Mazars revelation is related to that level of crime because they did the accounting for Donald Trump where he was playing with all the different numbers and making up wildly different numbers for the same properties. Now, I don't know what happened at Mazars, but very likely what happened was they got their hand caught in the cookie jar. They didn't know for a decade that Trump was playing with the property values. Have you ever met Donald Trump? They met Donald Trump and they trusted his numbers? Well, no, but that's not their job. Their job is not to trust the numbers. Their job is to validate the numbers. Yeah. So I think Mazars is in a lot of legal trouble. And not I know, because you don't do this to a client, because every other client's gonna go, hey, are they gonna do it to me? That is a very significant problem for their firm. You don't do that to a client, especially one as high profile as Donald Trump, unless you did something terribly illegal and you're trying to get the hell out of the building. and you're now cooperating with prosecutors and saying, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. Oh my God, I had no idea what his property values were.
Yeah.
Who could figure out what property values are? What am I, an accounting firm? Actually, you are. So them putting that letter out means they pulled a chute. They're gone. They're trying to avoid criminal responsibility themselves. And Trump, if he was a regular person, would be in massive trouble.
Yeah.
That's not a little illegal. That's a lot illegal, and that'll get you a lot of time in jail or in prison. Okay, I haven't gotten to the third layer yet.
Sure, not directly in prison yet, because the investigation that the New York AG Tish James is engaged in can't directly result in criminal charges, just civil, like financial charges. But it could lead into something else. That is
so. Yeah, let's be clear about that. So the civil charges have been laid out, but they are also working on a criminal case in conjunction with the Manhattan DA.
Yes,
they have not announced any indictments yet. That is why right now Eric Trump and Donald Jr. and Ivanka are nervously tweeting. Okay, oh, the real problem is Mazars. Yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. We'll reveal. Oh, the real problem is the prosecutors. The prosecutors are the problem.
Well, I think that for a decade, the Trump family was giving accurate information, humble information, let's be real, to Mazars, and then Mazars was lying about it and cheating.
Oh,
I think that's probably what was happening.
Because Mazars thought, you know what, I just want to help Donald Trump, even though he didn't ask for it. Okay, by putting myself in legal jeopardy.
Or maybe not even help him. Maybe, like many, they were taking advantage of humble, trusting Donald Trump.
Poor Donald Trump.
But anyway, look, I think you are right that there is a possibility of consequences, financial, if not criminal. In this case, more than in past ones, because there are already investigations ongoing. This is not a thing where we just have to hope that after 5 years, Mueller will actually move a little bit or something. That said, there have been a lot of stories that we've sat at this desk and covered that looked really, really bad for them, and he's still, walking around golfing and interrupting people's dinners. So
yeah, so now John's right that so far it's civil. They are doing the criminal investigation. They have not announced anything about that yet. So I'm going to put out a percentage, which is fun. I now think Donald Trump has a 2% chance of being convicted. Now, why do I say 2%? It should be based on these facts. If you put a random person there that had no political connections at all, I'd say the chance of conviction is about 80%, okay? When the full weight of the government comes down on you, and New York Attorney General and the Manhattan DA's office is looking into you, you're in a world of trouble, okay? So they don't do those investigations, they don't risk their careers for fun, right? They only do it if they're absolutely positively sure. Doesn't mean they get everything right, but especially in a high profile case like this, they're usually honestly scared, right? So to me, the civil actions, I don't care. I don't care about bankrupting Donald Trump. I care about the criminal actions, okay? So, because if he's, I don't know, I mean, Republicans might make him president from jail, who knows, right? I mean, they love him no matter what. They're like, oh, he's a proven criminal and he stole my money through taxes? Oh, I love him even more, he's so savvy, right? I wouldn't put it past them, right? But I think it'll make a difference overall if he's put up on criminal charges, and especially if he's convicted, but it requires courage to simply do your job. And here, the way that they have laid it out in the civil cases is so overwhelming, they're gonna be hard pressed not to file criminal charges because it's clearly a crime.
Yeah, the only fear I would say is that, look, you're saying the fact that he would be in prison, that might get through. It might also be jujitsu'd into, he's a bigger martyr now.
Yeah, of course.
They finally locked him up, maybe. And I disagree a little bit. Like, I love the idea of them bankrupting, but I also think it's impossible. Like, if he actually lost whatever money he has now, he'd release an NFT of his hair or something, and there would be credulous Trump supporters that would give him $1 million. So it's probably impossible. That said, I want to get your reaction to one more, again, a paragraph with a whole bunch of sort of vague language that we could interpret into. So they say, Mazars said that it concluded that the statements were no longer reliable based on a couple different things, and I find all of these interesting. So one is based in part on the Attorney General's earlier filings, its own investigations, and information the accountants received from internal and external sources. So the Attorney General's earlier filings imply that the Attorney General had some sort of information that so directly contradicted things that had gone into the financial statements they'd worked on that they could no longer stand by them. Their own investigations, which by the way, they do not come out and say anything specific based on that. They say, we haven't identified any material discrepancies, except in your investigations, you found something that made you worried about your own thing. So what does that even mean? And then internal and external sources, presumably other than the AG's team. So internal sources means, what do they have? Someone who's cooperating with the AG? Is there someone who's leaking information? Somebody who testified that the valuations were wrong?
No, the external sources could be as simple as, well, Donald Trump said that his Trump Tower was worth $2 when filing his IRS forms, and we believed him. But we looked it up online on Zillow and found out that it's actually worth a lot more than that. And so,
$10.
and then we looked at our internal sources. And, oh yeah, it's not worth $2 because we filed another form that said that it was worth $2 billion.
So,
right?
So you think internal to Mazars, not internal to the Trump organization, not an internal source who knows that they've been cooking the books and is participating in the AG's investigation?
My interpretation of that was internal to Mazars.
Okay.
And by the way, one of the COO's son looks like he's cooperating. COO of Trump. Org, okay, not Mazars. So the prosecutors seem to have an inside person, at least at that level, cooperating. He apparently got a house also without paying taxes, etc. So that's how they got him, and they flip him, etc. Guys, the minute you see Alan Weisselberg has flipped, he hasn't flipped yet. He's the chief financial officer. He's the one that kept all the books for Trump. If he flips, then Trump is actually in trouble. Okay. Now that hasn't happened yet, so I don't even know if the DAs are gonna gather up the courage to prosecute on something that is super straightforward and now is totally in the public record, and Trump's accounting office has said, oh yeah, we're totally lying. Okay, he was lying, we were lying, everybody was lying. Okay, I'm sorry, we made mistakes according to internal and external sources. Okay, according to everybody. Okay, so last thing is the third layer of financial crimes would be the most devastating, but right now there's not nearly enough information on it. So that's my theories. I'm not the only one that has these theories, but I'm clarifying for you guys that is not part of this story. Is the money laundering that Donald Trump might have done for the Russians and the connections that he had to Russian oligarchs through Deutsche Bank. That stuff has been investigated in the past, and that would be a completely different layer of financial crimes because it would connect him to a foreign government and have his financial interests tied to that. Now, I have speculated about that on the show because of information and evidence that is out in the public, right? So his two dumbass sons going, we got all our money from the Russians. Right, like, oh, nobody would lend him any more money after the 6 bankruptcies. And the sons get asked on 2 different occasions about that. And they go, oh yeah, there's no problem. The idiot Eric Trump was like, oh, it turns out the Russians love golf. That's why they give us so much money for the golf courses. Okay, now there's other evidence that's in public, that's not the only thing. But right now, there's no information about that. By the way, one of the reasons I love this story is because if all of the information actually becomes public, maybe we'll get to find out, did he do it or did he not do it in regards to Russians and the oligarchs and the Deutsche Bank? Because it might turn out that he didn't, and then I'll come out and say, oh, it turns out I was worried about that, but they really did an analysis of it, and it turns out he wasn't doing money laundering. I'll tell you that right away if that's what the information reveals, right? But so far, the jury is not even in so that it can't even go out on that yet. So we don't know yet about that. But the second layer is plenty good enough to convict any regular person. Now we're gonna see how much political clout Trump has to avoid these actual criminal charges.
He's rich, so probably a lot.
He's rich, he has 40% of the country that will believe anything he says. So that's a lot of power. And now it's gonna do battle with the law.
Yeah.
Okay. We got to take a quick break, guys. When we come back, we've got so much more for you guys, including the right-wing media outlets' lies, as we told you, and then an outrageous case where it turns out police departments are using evidence collected from rape victims against the victims.
Jesus.
Unbelievable.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.